My name is Parthu, and my presentation is on the effect of the COVID-19 shelter-in-place order on reported crime across community areas of Chicago. So in this, what we know is that the shelter-in-place order had a lot of social and economic impacts across various U.S. cities, and Chicago in particular. There were a lot of disproportionate effects across neighborhoods at different levels of COVID vulnerability. This was linked to crime and crime rates. So I was really interested in how shelter-in-place order had an impact on reported crime, reported domestic crime, and arrests, and also how the relationship between shelter-in-place and crime is changed by levels of COVID-19 vulnerability. So here I hypothesize that there's going to be a reduction in shelter-in-place order in the daily reported crime incidents due to the shelter-in-place order. There's going to be a increase in the incidence of domestic crime, and there's going to be a decrease in the proportion of daily average arrests. A lot of this reason is because the daily average, due to the shelter-in-place order, a lot of people are not going outside due to that, less crime. People are staying indoors, so because of that, more domestic crime. And because there's less overall reported crime, there'll be a decrease in arrests. I also thought that places that had the greatest COVID-19 vulnerability have the least decreases in reported crime because more people are outside, but also higher positive for domestic crimes because could link with higher rates of unemployment and various other comorbidities. And the highest positive effects on daily average arrests due to other categories of crime that occur in these communities. I also, to carry this out, I estimated the effect of the shelter-in-place order using an RDD, and I also compared these RDDs across various buckets of COVID-19 vulnerability and neighborhoods. So I kind of grouped certain neighborhoods of various COVID-19 vulnerability levels and ran separate RDDs on them. What I see is that I took my outcome variable and I actually standardized it by neighborhood as well. So all the three outcome variables were standardized by neighborhood to make sure that there wasn't any difference. I used a difference in levels of crime. I used the Chicago Police Department police data, crime data from the Chicago data portal, which was on the crime level. And I collapsed that to make it the average daily average crimes by day. And I had my running variable be date. And my cutoff for the RDD was shelter-in-place order date. I also include the CCVI, which is COVID vulnerability index, and the shelter-in-place and CCVI interaction as well. I see here it's kind of a plot for my results of the standardized reported daily incidents. We see the cutoff demarcated by this dotted line. That's at March 16, 2020, the date of the shelter-in-place order. And I ran my regression just 30 days before and 30 days after this. So my sample size kind of includes that date to kind of take out all of the other seasonable changes. So what we see here is that daily average reported crime was actually reduced by 0.92 standard deviations, but increased the proportion of domestic crime by 0.141 standard deviations. Both hypothesized that would happen. However, the proportion of arrests out of daily average incidents increased by 0.124 standard deviations, which we weren't expecting. We see everything statistically significant here. Standard errors look good, so you say it's economically significant as well. On the other hand, we found that there was no heterogeneity. So, we didn't find that, but our results were not statistically significant. So I think this requires further research. We saw overall what we could see at least was that the greatest drops in daily average reported crime and the greatest increases in a proportion of domestic incidences and arrests were in neighborhoods with greatest COVID level vulnerability. As a result, we can say the RDD design kind of showed that there was actually a significant drop of daily average reported crime incidences and increase in domestic and as well as a proportion of arrests. And we can find that the findings on heterogeneity across COVID vulnerability level were inconclusive, but it looks like overall that this was driven by top 25% of COVID vulnerable neighborhoods. So in further research, I think that we need to study this heterogeneity a little bit more, maybe look at crime categories, look at how things like homicide, narcotics changed. But we should also look at bins further away from the cutoff date, and also take some of these findings and perhaps translate it to maybe domestic violence prevention packages to be included as part of COVID-19 shelter-in-place orders, et cetera. All right, thank you.